Sensex and Nifty end a volatile session with marginal gains. Mid-caps outperformed. Financial stocks also bucked the downtrend. PSU banks led the charge. The Nifty PSU Bank Index ending 3.5% higher.
Trent rallies 15% after a stellar Q3. On the other hand, IEX declines 4% after the electricity regulator proposes market coupling of power exchanges.
Government is likely to soften its stance on retrospective GST demands from real money online gaming companies. Sources say the centre sees merit in the argument that companies will be unable to meet what they now describe as unrealistic demands. Delta Corp stock soars in trade. Hello and welcome to a fresh new edition of Markets Forward. If you were looking for direction today from the Nifty, there was none to be found. But we'll tell you what to prepare for as we sort of look ahead into the next trading session. All the data, all the views, and of course, all the numbers. I'm Prashant, with me, my colleague Reema Tendulkar. Reema, hi.
Hi, Prashant. And we've got you covered over the next 20 minutes with all the big news, the key developments on Dalal Street, top corporate voices, and the events to watch ahead. But first, the markets. And nothing sort of a day, right? The Nifty ends 1 point up.
I mean, so
I was going to say 1%, and then I realized it was just 1 point.
Well, absolutely. I mean, no real trend and no answers as to what the market wants to do. Because, I mean, yesterday, actually, let's just rewind, right? I mean, as at the end of day before yesterday, it looked like finally the market is telling you it's not being able to sustain at higher levels, and there is a bit of a pullback which is emerging. It was looking like that. And then yesterday, there was no follow through. The market picked up and we ended 150 points higher. But today, there was no follow through to that. So you're in a kind of a no-go area with neither the market sort of obliging and breaking out higher, not breaking down as well. But why should that stop all the action? Because it was a vibrant market, right? I mean, market breadth, of course, the gap closed, but so many stocks moving and so sharply. PSU banks, of course, was the clear leader. And the smaller names, right? Actually, not just the smaller. That's not fair because SBI was up sharply. It was the top gainer in the Nifty. Canada Bank, a large PSU name, was up. But then there were also UCO, Central Bank of India, those kind of names which went up sharply. And those were 20% kind of movers. The Nifty PSU Bank Index itself was up some 3.5% by close. And of course, there were other individual names on the back of earnings. Trent, for example, stood out. There was IEX, which sold off sharply. There was Delta Corp. Some of these, of course, on the back of news flow and not earnings. And we'll touch upon some of these in greater detail in just a bit from now. Reema.
In terms of the frontline action, all the action took place in the first 2 hours. Still, 11:30 markets were holding up in the green. But after 11:30, that intraday chart will tell you that markets were absolutely sideways, moving in a very tight range, but flat. The Nifty, by the end of it, gave up 122 points from the day's high to end up 1 point. The mid-caps fared better. The mid-cap index up 3/4 of a percentage point and ending at the day's high. In terms of the movers, for this week, in fact, the Nifty, the mid-cap index has outperformed the frontline indices by quite a margin. IT was under pressure. The Nifty IT index down over 1%. Losses were led by Tech Mahindra, Infosys. PSU banks, as Prashant was pointing out, was the star today. State Bank of India was the top Nifty gainer. And Reliance Industries is another stock which, did quite well today. But let's tell you what we've lined up for you on our show today. We start with the top movers of the day. Vivek joins in. Well, a bunch of stocks were in focus, which includes Trent, Delta Corp, IEX, and Max Financial. We'll get you the key reasons that led to the big moves in these stocks. And CNBC TV18's popular segment, D-Street Chatter, also on the show, where Nimesh will tell us why SBI was buzzing today. And last but not the least, we delve into the key market events to watch out for tomorrow. Okay, and let's get to the first element of our show. That's the top stock movers. Vivek joins in. Vivek.
Well, thank you so much for that. Like you mentioned and like we've been mentioning throughout the day, after a while, the PSU banking pack was the one that made the highlight or the top reel of the list, given the fact that the entire pack outperformed in today's trading session. Canada Bank, all that the company did was they proposed that they're going to go ahead and split shares. Back of that stock ended higher by almost 5.5%. the entire PSU basket, especially the smaller names, doing very well in the session. Moving on, another company that's been doing quite well in terms of results was Trent. Now, Trent, outperformed what the analyst expectations were in terms of its Q3, and after that, the stock ended as one of the highest gainers as far as the F&O pack was concerned, up over 18%. The next stock, Delta Corp, like you mentioned, some softening of stance seen as far as the GST notices were concerned. Stock ended higher by 10%. It'll be interesting to see whether this particular stock continues or whether it gets into the ban list today evening. The next stock on the radar, a private bank, Yes Bank. A lot of banking stocks have been given approval as far as some of the mutual funds are concerned to go ahead and buy up to 9.9%, and that has led to the cheer in some of these banking names today. Yes Bank, one of the top gainers as far as the NSE 500 index was concerned. And last stock, Paytm, as far as the gaining list was concerned. Paytm, 3 successive sessions of hitting the lower circuit. Yesterday, it hit the lower circuit, recovered quite sharply. Today, it ends at the upper circuit of 10%. But on the other hand, quite a few stocks that actually hit lows in the session today. First, IEX, like we mentioned, fears of market coupling are now becoming and getting closer to reality, and the stock ending lower by 5%, seen as a significant negative development. Power Grid today, this particular stock faced selling pressure ahead of its results. Kotak Institutional Equity, removed the stock from their model portfolio. They do believe that markets are overpricing in some of the PSU utility stock rally. NLC India, quite a sharp sell-off after a weak set of results. Sirma, SGX, margins declined by over 400 basis points. Stock sold off quite significantly. And lastly, chemical companies did have a weak Q3. Navin Fluorine, the latest in the list, down over 5% today.
All right, Vivek, thank you very much for that. We have Shilpa Rout of Prabhudas Lilladher and Ambareesh Baliga with us on the program to make sense of some of the moves that we saw. Thanks very much for joining in. Let's make this a bit of a rapid fire between the both of you. Let's tackle the index first, Shilpa. No clear direction. Will we get one, and can the market stay like this at near all-time highs? The index, that is.
Yeah, Prashant, I guess, the index view stays the same as it has been for the past 1 week. It is a sideways market where the range is respected very nicely. For Nifty, you have the downside range at around 21,700 and upside pressure at 22,000 to 22,100 zones. So this range is very well played. So one has to also practice and learn how to do this the right way. And for Bank Nifty, we have the support at around 45,500. So, as long as we are holding this, I believe we are fine, and we can see upside movement to 46,500 to 47,000. But then any dip below 45,500 will definitely trigger a little more sell-off towards 44,000 zones. So Bank Nifty is more of a, of an indecisive trend right now than Nifty. Nifty is playing the range well.
Ambareesh, I was talking to a mutual fund manager yesterday who was saying that one of their funds, it's a momentum fund, they don't market it like that. In the last 30 days, it is up 55%. The fund, not a stock.
Yeah.
This
market is purely momentum. And those who have got it right, those who are keeping their stop losses correctly and, keeping a trailing stop loss have made... the sort of money which they were never imagined. How can you expect a mutual fund to give you 50% plus in a month? I really don't know. But yes, they've shown that.
And PSU banks, they continue to move up. Ambareesh, any thoughts? 3.5% again on the PSU bank, the Nifty PSU bank index.
No, that's true. Since the momentum is there in these stocks, it can still move up further. Because again, although I may say that the valuations are getting expensive, there are people who are comparing them with the private sector banks and still feel that there's some more upside. So, stocks like SBI, Canara Bank, even a PNB, which has just started moving in the past couple of weeks, I think these are stocks which can move up further. The smaller ones, which you have seen moving today, you can still see a further up move. But like I said, we should utilize this only for trading. And at this point of time, fresh investment for, if you're looking at the next year and a half, I wouldn't suggest.
Okay, stay on. Let's talk about some of the big movers of the day. And Trent is right on top, ends up in a upper circuit of 20%, a very stellar showing in Q3. Net profits up 140% to 370 crore rupees, while the revenues are up 50%. Mangalam joins in with the details. Mangalam, clearly no slowdown for Trent. It may be for its peers, but not for Trent.
No slowdown for Trent. In fact, no slowdown for its latest format, which is Zudio, which started out as an experiment and now has become the growth driver for the company itself. At a time when most consumer companies are struggling for growth, Trent has reported a 50% jump in their revenues, a 100% jump in their EBITDA, and as a result of which the net profit also jumped about 140%. Not that the street wasn't expecting growth like this, but these numbers have actually been better than even what the street was anticipating. And the company has continued its expansion path. 5 stores of Westside were added during the quarter, 50 stores of Zudio itself. And the fashion concepts like-for-like growth this time around was about 10% as well. The gross margin portfolio for both Westside and Zudio have stayed stable. All of this means that Trent's outperformance continues. The stock has doubled in the last 6 months itself, and in the last 5 years itself, it has moved 10 times. So this pivot to Zudio, and at the same time, a lot of these growth verticals that they are seeding will do extremely well. The stock is just trading at 89 times FY25 earnings, so this is something we'll have to watch out for.
Okay, stay with us, Mangalam, because you are also looking at, Delta and the kind of up move that we have. Now, sources tell CNBC TV18 that online gaming companies could get a breather as the government is likely to soften its stance on GST demand notices. But how will this impact Delta, which moved up 10% today? Mangalam?
Well, there was a big move on Delta, understandably, but while this is a relief, this is not the relief from all of Delta's problems. So there are 2 basic problems that Delta was facing, and as a result of which the stock price, which was underperforming as well over the last 6 months or so. The big change that happened in Delta, which caused its derating, was the GST Council recommending 28% uniform tax rate on horse racing, online gaming and casino, and these taxes would be applicable on the face value of chips purchased at a casino itself, and that brought the business to a bit of a disadvantage. The other issue started with the company when a lot of these state GST councils started asking the company for GST tax show cause notices to the amount of nearly 23,000 from West Bengal, as well as the one in South India, in Tamil Nadu itself. Now, the company on its part, after the third quarter, said that GST show cause notice for this 23,000 crore demand would be heard next month, with all these amounts being clubbed, and lawyers believe that there is no need for the company to provide for this because they were confident of fighting that. So that is where the relief has come in. On the GST rate change itself, there hasn't been much relief. Remember, this is also the last series where Delta Corp will be in F&O. Chances are it enters F&O ban, so one needs to be mindful of that. A relief, yes, but not a panacea for all their problems.
All right, Mangalam, thanks very much for that. So that's Delta with that sharp surge, but it's a developing story in that sense, and we'll try and get the management to speak with us on this. But the stock which fell was IEX, was down about 5%. The CERC, the regulator, the power regulator, planned to provide enabling provisions to implement market coupling of power exchanges. Vivek is here with details in terms of what this means and why the stock fell. Vivek.
Well, absolutely right. So we are talking about the short-term power market, and within the short-term power market, the biggest overhang as far as the stock price of IEX is concerned is actually the implementation of market coupling. Remember, in September 2023, CERC had gone ahead and issued a staff paper inviting comments and recommendations from various stakeholders within the power market exchange itself to go ahead and give their comments as far as the implementation of market coupling was concerned. So after that, yesterday, the CERC issued a document saying that they needed a lot more evidence before they could go ahead and implement market coupling. So what is the recommendation that they've given? They're going ahead and saying they've directed the grid operator, and in this case, the grid operator will be Grid India, to go ahead and run a dummy exchange for the next 4 months. This particular exchange will be run after the development of the software, for which they've given around 2 months. Now, why is this important for IEX? Remember, IEX is the dominant power exchange. As of January, IEX in the short-term power market had over 90% of the market share. Now, in case a one nation, one grid, one price comes into effect, you will see, the volumes of IEX get distributed amongst the 3 exchanges that are present as far as the short-term power market is concerned, and which is why markets believe that this particular development is a significant overhang. IEX did comment on this particular development. They are saying they are waiting and watching before taking any steps.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Moving on, Max Financial rallied nearly 5% after IRDAI approved the deal between Axis Bank and Max Life. Axis Bank will acquire 6% stake in Max Life. Yash is standing by with the details on this deal. Yash.
Well, Rima, the numbers, Q3 numbers were quite disappointing. Missed CNBC TV18 poll on all parameters. But a big positive announcement which came was the insurance regulator's approval when it comes to Axis Bank Max Life transaction. Under this transaction, Axis Bank will acquire about 6% stake in Max Life Insurance. About 14.25 crore shares will be issued, and Axis Bank would be infusing about 1,612 crores in Max Life Insurance. Now, the reason why this deal is positive, one thing is because it happens at a much higher valuation than the first tranche of the transactions, where as far as the first tranche is concerned, where Axis entities acquired about 13% stake, that happened at a valuation of 6,600 crore rupees. This one, where they acquire about 6% additional stake, happens at a valuation of 26,886 crore rupees. So, of course, positive before Max Financial and Max Life because of the higher valuation. Second thing, Max Life solvency sees an uptick of about 40%, as much as 40%, because of the 1,600 crore rupees coming into the company. Max Life gets growth capital for the next 18 to 20 months. And another important point would be Max Life has received a strong and a large distributor in the form of Axis Bank. As we were closing down the markets, of course, another very important piece of news came. Very strong January life insurance numbers for Max Life Insurance as well.
Okay, and I think that we'll see the reaction to maybe tomorrow as markets open. Yes, thanks for that. Shilpa and Ambareesh are still with us. Ambareesh, just want your thoughts. First, let's tackle Delta. Completely bombed out. You heard, Mangalam explain that. Right. So, if the government were to walk back on its demands, the retrospective bit, the tax remains 28, but if the retrospective demands they don't pursue vigorously, do you think there's a chance one makes money here?
Absolutely, because we have seen so much of underperformance. The stock cracked when that demand had come, and now they've got a breather as far as online gaming is concerned. I'm quite sure they'll get a breather as far as the offshore casino also is concerned. And still going ahead, I would still say that there could be a rework on the GST rates, because I don't think the government would like to kill the golden goose. Max
Life, Ambareesh, any thoughts? It is within an underperforming sector. It is the underperforming stock.
Absolutely, but then I've not really tracked it very closely, so I really will not be able to really comment on that.
Shilpa, your thoughts on these two, Delta and Max?
Delta, of course, data-wise, if you look at it, has given a breakout today above 150. So the sustenance here can see the stock moving up to 165 to 170 zones. And as far as MFSL is concerned, I believe that it is showing a lot of long built up on the OI side, where the stock is supposed to test 1,000 zones in no time, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Shilpa and Ambareesh, for joining in. With that, it's time for a short break. We'll get to our popular segment, D Street Chatter, along with the top market events to watch out for on the other side.
Welcome back. You're with us here on Markets Forward. Let's tell you the top voices that we had through the course of the day. Some of the companies we spoke with. TTK Prestige was a company we spoke with. The numbers for the third quarter were a steady set. Domestic sales grew in the single digits. Export sales, though, surged about 21%. We had the company MD telling us that demand in the month of December, in the last month of the third quarter, actually fell sharply as compared to the previous 2 months, although they are expecting things to improve in FY25. They're hoping to maintain a 15% EBITDA margin in FY25 as well.
Moving on to a CNBC TV18 exclusive, Tata Motors MD Shailesh Chandra tempered expectations on the growth outlook, which was earlier expected at 20 to 25%. He said this was an account of a rise in input cost, commodity prices and inflation. However, he added that a rise in household incomes has led to more people buying cars.
All right, that's one of the top performing stocks of the last 1 year. Actually, it is the best performing stock of the last 1 year or so, along with some of the other auto names. But it's time now for our segment, D Street Chatter. Nimesh, of course, getting us what's the buzz. Nimesh, what are you picking up?
Well, it was an extremely choppy day of trade, a bit of churn in the PSU basket as well. But in terms of individual names, the first stock indeed is a PSU stock, which is SBI. A big move in that stock on large volumes as well. I understand a Lilling long only fund has an active buyer in SBI post the earnings, so that's the first stock. The second name is DLF. While the entire real estate basket did well, but DLF stands out on very strong buy flows from larger FIs. So expect very high delivery volumes in DLF in today's trade. The third name is Zomato. It's been consolidating in a narrow range, but I understand the selling pressure from a leading long FI fund is largely getting over, and some domestic mutual funds are accumulating as well. Remember, the numbers are tomorrow, so watch out for Zomato's earnings tomorrow. The last is Care Ratings. That's been buzzing in the last many days on very strong buy flows from larger HI. So looks like some HNI investors have turned active buyers in Care Ratings of late.
Nimesh, interesting list as always. Thank you very much for that. Typically at this time, we always tell you the key events to watch out for. But tomorrow, there's only one big event that all eyes will be on, and that's the RBI monetary policy. So straight away, let's get to Ritu and find out the highlights from the CNBC TV18 MPC poll. Ritu?
Well, thanks for that. And I'm going to start with the setup for this macro policy because, it's coming just a week after the interim budget where we had two positive surprises. One, that the government stuck to its fiscal consolidation path. And the second, that it has even lowered its market borrowings for the coming year. The US Fed also has indicated it will not hike rates in March. The global economy seems to be heading towards a soft landing. Domestic growth has held up and core inflation has remained sub 4%. So in this backdrop, with no big reason to cut or hike rates, essentially the markets are going to focus on liquidity more than rates in this policy. Let's look at the liquidity then, because it's persistently remained tight since the last policy. So how much liquidity does RBI provide? How will it provide that liquidity, whether it takes that VRRR route, VRR route, or some other instrument? The markets are going to closely watch for that. As for rates, 100% of our respondents do not expect any action on the repo rate this time around for the sixth consecutive time because there's no real reason to justify a cut at this point of time with inflation closer to 6% than 4%. Now, as for the stance of the policy, it is expected to be retained at withdrawal of accommodation. Next, as far as some of the economists are pointing out, there is a small chance that the stance could be shifted to neutral, what with the interbank call rates declining below the repo rates. Now, 90% of our respondents, in fact, also said that the tone of the policy is likely to be absolutely even, with the remaining even expecting the governor to sound dovish, indicating some sort of a comfort with a growth inflation trajectory. So when will the rate cycle actually turn? According to our respondents, that window could not open before the June policy. 50% are expecting it in the second quarter and 40% in the first quarter of the next financial year. Now, as far as the CPI projection is concerned, unlikely that RBI will tinker with it just yet, even for the coming quarter in the next financial year. And on GDP, while the current projection is 7% for the year, with the NSO also estimating a 7.3% kind of a growth, some are expecting RBI to align to that number. So that's for the policy. Of course, we'll also watch out for what the governor says on Paytm.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Ritu. That's the big one, right? Apart from the policy, I think people will want to hear from the RBI officially, and I think there will be a lot of questions on what the governors and the RBI's view is with regards to Paytm, the top story for the last, I think, almost a week now. Well, that's it on this edition of Markets Forward. From all of us here, thanks for watching, thanks for staying with us, but news and updates follow on the other side.